Hello, good day everyone. My name is Dr. Kwang Wei Yan. I'm a consultant physician and nephrologist, and today I'm going to talk to you regarding nutrition in elderly. So, what's the definition of elderly? So, as you know, these are different stages of our human life. So, WHO define elderly as 60 and above. So, when you're 60 to 75 years old, we call elderly. And then when you're 75 to 90, there's another term for it, which is senile age. And then 90 and above, we call them long livers. But of course, as you know, it's just a spectrum, of different age. So when we age, not only we should just age, but we should really aim for what we call healthy aging. So World Health Organization defines health as including not only physical and mental health, but also social well-being. So healthy aging, on the other hand, means ongoing process of developing and maintaining the functional abilities that enables well-being in older age. So not only aging, but we should aim for healthy aging. So there are a few elements of healthy aging, four main elements: functional abilities, environment, intrinsic capacity, and also well-being. So in order to achieve these components, good nutrition is very, very important for the elderly. So I'm going to have a few suggestions for you. So these are my suggestions for eating well for the elderly. So number one, we should know what a healthy plate looks like. So as you know, Asian diet, our staple diet is carbohydrate. And maybe it's relevant, in our parents or grandparents' generation. But in our generation, it's less relevant anymore. So we cannot just depend on carbohydrate, as you know. So there's actually a term for this healthy plate. We call it suku separuh. So one quarter should be protein, one quarter should be starch or carbohydrate-based product, and also half should be vegetable or fruits. So this is how you determine basically, for your carbohydrate or starch containing food, a fistful of that. And then for meat, it depends on whether it's red meat or chicken or fish. So if it's fish or chicken, which we call white meat, you can eat a little bit more. And also half portion of your plate, as I mentioned, should be fruits and vegetable. So tips number two is, of course, we should follow recommended serving sizes. We should take a balance, a moderate, and a variety of diet. Yeah? So take a look at the Malaysian Food Pyramid, which was recommended by KKM in 2020. It's basically the same as I mentioned just now. So the majority of the diet should compose of vegetable and fruits, followed by carbohydrate and protein, and we should limit intake of fat, oils, sugar, and salt, those unhealthy stuff. So tips number three, look for important nutrients. This is especially important for elderly people. So if elderly people just keep on consuming carbohydrate, and carbohydrate, there would be lack of certain nutrients. So protein is of utmost importance for elderly people, because elderly people, they tend to lose a lot of protein in their metabolism. So they might be in what we call catabolic state, or in a negative nitrogen balance, which is a negative protein balance. If they don't keep up with their nutritional intake containing protein, they'll be having muscle loss and whatnot. So when they lose their muscle, they will become weaker and weaker. So protein is important. The food sources for protein, of course, is like fish, chicken, eggs, even red meat. But as I mentioned, we don't recommend eating that much of red meat for the elderly. And also varieties of nuts and also milk. We should look for calcium and vitamin D as well, which maintain bone mineral density for the elderly. And the sources for this include milk and milk products. Fibers, which should aid in digestive health for the elderly. And then food sources for fibers are vegetables and fruits, of course. And we should look for vitamin B complex, and we should look for iron as well. So vitamin B complex would help to maintain the nervous system, where iron will improve the blood health. So tips number four, we should consume foods lower in fat, salt, and also added sugar. So in order to do this, there are a few ways that we can achieve it. So for example, go for healthy cooking methods. We try to bake, boil, braise, grill, and steam the food instead of stir fry, fry and whatnot. Yeah. So we can replace salt with herbs and also spices. Yeah. So that's another tip. And also, there are a few ways that we can do to reduce added salt. So for example, for beverage, we can primarily drink plain water or low-fat milk or 100% fruit juice. And then for fruit, we can eat fresh whole fruits instead of canned or preserved fruits. And then dairy milk, we can choose plain or unsweetened version. Yeah? These are a few ways that we can reduce added salt in our diet. So of course, tips number 5, the elderly should stay hydrated. We should aim for about 6 to 8 glasses of fluid per day, especially if the elderly is still having a very active lifestyle. But of course, there are some exceptions to this rule. If an elderly person has kidney problem, heart problem, for example, then they should listen to the doctor's advice regarding what would be the fluid restriction. So these are a number of fruits or food with high water content. And if you go through the list, most of these are belonging to the vegetable or fruits category. So now, after giving you the few tips for healthy living, I'm going to point out a few common eating problems in the elderly, namely chewing difficulties, reduced taste, dry mouth, poor digestion, and poor appetite. And if you have an elderly parent at home, of course, some of you might have known that these are very, very common, eating problem in the elderly. Of course, some of these can be partially treated, but most of these issues won't be able to be completely treated, because this is part and parcel of our aging. However, there are a lot of things that we can do to overcome or to at least alleviate a few of these issues. So let's go through them one by one. Strategies to overcome problems to eating healthy in elderly. So eating problem number 1, as I mentioned, chewing difficulties, and it can be due to loosened teeth, which is, as you know, extremely common in the elderly, or some elderly, or most elderly for that matter, they would have certain degree of decreased saliva secretion. Yeah. So in order to overcome this, there are a few strategies that I'm going to recommend and share with you. First, choose the food with suitable texture. Yeah? And then secondly, you can cut food into smaller pieces by chopping or grinding. You can modify food texture by pureeing with blenders before eating. And you can cook food thoroughly until it's tender, or you can add some sauce to make it easier for the elderly to chew. So of course, we should encourage proper chewing, instead of just put food in the mouth and swallow them. So the elderly person won't be able to enjoy the eating process anymore if they just put food in the mouth and swallow them. So we should encourage chewing. We should ensure good dentures and also proper dental hygiene. A lot of elderly thinks that, oh, if they have already lost their teeth, what for wasting money to put, to make a pair of good dentures, right? So actually that's wrong. With a proper pair of fitting denture, the elderly should be able to still enjoy their eating process. So common problem number 2 is reduced taste. This is unfortunately due to deterioration of taste bud, which is again part and parcel of aging. So in order to overcome this, instead of relying heavily on salt, we can actually use herbs or spices. Like for example, in Eastern people, Oriental people like us, we like to use ginger, spring onion, garlic, dry tangerine peel, etc. And then we can use Western herbs, for example, parsley, coriander, and pepper as well, to season the food. And this can effectively increase the taste a little bit without, as I mentioned, relying so much on salt or sugar, etc. So common problem number 3, dry mouth. And again, this is due to reduced saliva production, which is extremely common in the elderly. So strategies to overcome it, we can try to ensure adequate fluid intake. For example, as I mentioned just now, there are some exceptions to this rule if a patient has heart or kidney problem. So second thing that you can do is to choose moist food such as porridge, mashed potato, or steamed egg pudding. And you can try to provide food with sauce, gravies, or clear soup, or soften the bread or crackers with milk or soup before serving to the elderly. And then, of course, a few things that you can do, which is to drink some liquid to moisten the food before meals, or you can ask the elderly to chew on some fresh lime slices to stimulate saliva production. Yeah, these steps are quite easy to do. It takes a little bit of effort, but it's definitely doable. So, common problem number four, poor digestion, and it can be stemming from the, again, aging, yeah, of a person, including aging of the digestive tract. So, strategies to overcome it, we can try to have small, frequent meals every few hours, and then we can encourage the elderly to chew slowly. And of course, we shall encourage the elderly to avoid intake of fried or high-fat food, which is going to compromise the digestion a little bit further. And then they can try to reduce intake of caffeine or alcohol-containing drinks or food, and always discourage them from lying down right after meals, which might actually cause more problem with the already poor digestion. So common problem number five, poor appetite. And as you know, this might be actually the most common among all these common problems for the elderly. Can be due to various reasons. As I mentioned, some of them treatable, some of them not. So it can be due to various illness, any reason for gastrointestinal discomfort, for example, gastric problem. Some can be due to side effect of medication, and also poor emotional and psychological well-being can definitely lead to poor appetite as well. And of course, a lot of medical conditions, for example, kidney diseases. So strategies to overcome them, you can try food with bland colors to make the food and the presentation more exciting and satisfying. Yeah? So you can prepare nutrient-dense food by adding a lot of materials like minced meat, fish, bean curd, egg, potato, or dry beans into the porridge, the noodles, or the soup. And of course, if this is severe, and especially if it's getting worse, we need to treat the underlying medical causes. So this is a short presentation. I hope that you like my sharing. So thanks for your attention, and we shall see you again.